everyone. Thanks for joining us today and welcome to the Pollinate Potluck. My name is Ariel Molino and I'm the Chief Convener with Pollinate Impact. And I'm joining today from Nairobi, Kenya. So this series and the session you are joining today, the session that we're getting started, is actually a really interactive workshop called The Power of Storytelling. And this series that's been taking place this week and next week is really the launch of Pollinate Impact, which is a member-led network of impact incubators and accelerators in the Global South. So we empower and resource impact incubators across the Global South to collectively amplify our impact to solve the biggest problems facing people on the planet. And one of the major challenges we've heard as we are getting this network up and running is access to shared tools and resources and expertise in certain areas. And that's really why we wanted to make sure that we're building on the skills and tools and resources available to not just to all staff members at all levels. And yesterday we had a really great session on impact measurement. So I almost see this as kind of part 2 of that, of how do you actually share your impact and share your story, not only with potential entrepreneurs who you might want to attract to your incubation programs, but with funders, with donors, with potential partners, anyone that you really want to engage with in your network. So I think that's enough of an introduction. I see a lot of familiar faces who I think have been to a lot of our potluck sessions. So we're really delighted to have you here, and please be engaged, interactive. I know Aditi is really looking for a lot of inputs from you all in this session. And we'll just start with a couple of check-ins for everyone. Our geographic focus at Pollinate Impact is Sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, and Southeast Asia, but we want to know where you all are coming from. So we just have a quick poll to see where everybody's coming from. Just type in the Menti poll there, and there should be, yes, perfect. Tessin has just shared the Mentimeter link. So just click that link, and all you have to do is type in the country where you're joining from, and we'll get a great little visual map here. So let me add in my own country. I am coming in from Kenya, India, great. South Africa, nice. I think I see Salma. Maybe she's the one joining from South Africa. Hi, Salma. So awesome. Keep them coming. Let us know where you're joining from. It's great for us to see this diversity. And one of the big things that we are focused on Pollinate Impact is South-South collaboration. So we're really keen to share stories and learnings. Great, Ghana, awesome. Really keen to share, stories and learnings from across the Global South. And the next check-in question we have, you can go to the next slide on the same Mentimeter poll, is which best describes your organization? So are you an incubator, an accelerator? Are you an academic institution? Maybe you're a donor or from government, from media. And if you're other, there's another. Let us know what you are in the chat so we know we can include that for the next time. So keep on filling that up, and I will hand everything over to Aditi, who is moderating and facilitating this workshop today. Aditi is joining us from India with Unlock Impact. And along with her, we have Simunza, who's joining from BongoHive, who is one of the incubators and accelerators that we've worked with in the past through Pollinate Impact and previously with Vilgrow USA. So Aditi, I will hand it over to you without any further ado.
Thank you so much, Ariel. Nice to meet everybody. The thing about getting a slot on a Friday is that it could go either way. One is that people are very relaxed, and so they're feeling very kind and forgiving. Or the other thing is that it's like, it's at the end of the week and they want to get, whatever, as much in as possible. So either way, it's a good thing. I think the most important thing is that the fact that all of you have taken time out. You run businesses, you work very hard at your organizations. The fact that you've taken some time out to learn, I think, is a huge thing. So thank you so much for that. And really, a round of applause to all of you for actually taking the time out, not only to attend this session, but this whole week to learn from all of the awesome stuff that Pollinate Impact has done the whole week. I'm very happy to be here as well. And I'm so glad I could contribute to this. we call this session, there are a lot of different terms. There's the power of storytelling, the storytelling for impact. There's, you can call it, how to break down sort of how we communicate as people and as organizations. For me, the main thing is that I really do believe that storytelling is there's no secret sauce to it. And I don't think it's about being like a wizard with words or being, waving like a magic wand and suddenly, you know how to tell a good story. I really think it's about just understanding the basics and simplifying it. And of course, being authentic. I think audiences are very smart today. So people know when you're not being authentic. And then how do you succeed based on, given the resources you have and given the conditions that you operate in, right? Because I do want to mention that, we're all here not because, we didn't set out here saying that, okay, most of us probably did not set out saying that, okay, I like telling stories, so I'm going to tell stories. We're all here because we wanted to solve a problem. There was something happening. We wanted to do something about it, and we wanted to solve a problem. And yes, storytelling helps to do that. So the idea really is about, how can you understand how to do that better and maybe reach more people and connect with them more authentically. So that's really sort of the idea behind today's session. We'll do it in 2 parts. The first part is more of me kind of talking about some experiences and sharing some frameworks that you can hopefully apply to your own organization. And I'm very fortunate that in the second part, I actually have a guest speaker, which is Simunza. So that we can actually talk to someone working on the ground to understand really what are the challenges and what are people dealing with on a day-to-day basis, right? So that's just to give you an idea of what's going to happen later today. As Ariel said, my name is Aditi Seshadri. I run a company called Unlock Impact. We do 2 things under Unlock Impact. We have a program called Comms Ninja. You can see our logo over here because we realized very early on to do comms in this space, you really have to be a ninja and be ready for anything life throws at you. I also run a community for women entrepreneurs called the New Shoe Network. And all of this we run under the Unlock Impact umbrella. And my personal background, the reason, so why me, right? Like, why am I sort of talking here and why am I talking about some of these things? The reason for that is I started my career 20 years ago as a journalist, print journalist, when that used to actually be a thing, when newspapers and magazines used to be a thing. I started writing for them. And then over time, I kind of made my way into the social sector, and I worked in marketing and comms roles for multiple organizations, including Wilgrow in India about 10 years ago, which was sort of the previous version of what Pollinate Impact is today, which is where I learned a lot about entrepreneurship and the sector and social impact and how all of these things can come together. And I said, why life is good and simple, why let me complicate it some more. So then after that, I decided to start my own business and, entered life as an entrepreneur, which many of you will be familiar with. And in all of its, highs and lows and glories and everything. So that's where I am today. I think the common thread in all of this was that it was always driven by a sense of purpose. What that purpose was changed a little bit over time, but it was really, meaning work had to mean something more than just work. And over time, that really solidified into, helping other people tell their stories and working with them and just figuring out how to communicate better about everything that people are doing, right? And what is the impact that they're having. So that's where I am today. And that's why, therefore, taking this session on storytelling and all of that. I'm going to pause here. Enough about me. I just wanted to maybe do a check of the room. Just use chat. I can see, there's quite a few people on, so maybe we can start with chat. Just, mention a movie you watched recently, and maybe if you liked it, why did you like it? And if you didn't like it, why didn't you like it? You can just use chat to sort of, put down your points, and then we can take it from there. Any movie, show, any movie, TV show, web series that you watched recently? Brenda said Celebrity. Did you like it, Brenda? And if you did, why? And if you didn't, why didn't you like it? More responses, please. Let's hear from everyone. Just use chat. Awesome. Ariel says Wonder Woman. It's an awesome show of female strength. It's beautiful. It's strong. I'm going to wait for a few more responses. I'm very patient. Nice. Vidyut has said Radiance. It's a Japanese movie. It talked about a blind man's impact and life, and was eye-opening on how that world can be and what goes on in their mind. Amazing. Okay, Anandita loved Nimona for the strong female lead, the animation, great writing. The Nun 2, which is out in theaters right now, loved it because there's something intriguing about women scaring the daylights out of out of the world. Amina has 2 teenagers, that explains it. Nice. A Haunting in Venice, Lincoln Lawyer, The Hobbit. It's amazing, right? Like in like a minute, I literally just like in 30 seconds or a minute, you were so quickly able to articulate, what why you liked or didn't like something. And you went straight to what is sort of the core of the movie or the show that you watched, right? There was a story behind it. There was something that called out to you, or maybe something that didn't, but you know that. And for me, this is always great because it's like, if I gave you 1 minute to talk about a show or a movie that you didn't direct, that you didn't spend like years working on, that you didn't write or anything like that, in 1 minute, you were able to talk about why you liked some other story. So imagine if you had that same perspective about your own organization and you applied that mindset to your own organization that you know so well. Imagine what you could do with that, right? So that's what we're going to spend a little bit of time on. Keep the responses coming. These are also great because you can kind of see how different and varied people's tastes are, right? And that also is a great point because it also shows you, like, audiences are different, perspectives are different. So it's important to kind of understand where people are coming from. Nice. I see an oldie goldie, Forrest Gump. Amazing. So point being, stories, we all have them. We all have them in us. We all know what we like. We are all drawn to stories. So how do we make them work for us a little bit, right? So I want to start by, literally today you can Google anything to do with storytelling and comms and you'll find all the answers online, right? There's nothing unique or unusual that's going to suddenly happen in this, the next hour that you spend over here. I'm not going to unlock something totally brand new that no one has ever heard of. However, like I said, my endeavor is to simplify it and make it applicable for your particular context and organization, right? So again, you Google this and you'll find like enough information on, there are literally basically only 7 types of stories that exist in the world. And if you look at all of the examples of the movies and shows we looked at, they will invariably fall into one format or the other. And it's a very sort of well-established, framework that you can make all stories follow this kind of format, this framework. So I'll just talk a little bit about what those stories are. There's the very common overcoming the monsters. If you've watched Avengers movies or superhero movies, and this happens to me, I've watched every single Avenger movie, and then I come out and I'm like, why did I watch it? It was exactly the same story. But there is something about the story that makes me go back, right? It is this concept of overcoming the monster, like the good versus evil kind of thing. And this is a very common story type that you find a lot, everywhere in all types of businesses. You find it, in fact, more in the social impact sector because we have big problems that we're trying to solve in, whether you're an incubator or an NGO or, any kind of, or an entrepreneur, you're trying to solve a problem, you're trying to overcome the big monster. So this is a story that a lot of us relate to. A lot of brands use this story as well. Interestingly, when Amazon first started, they actually started off as the little guy, right? They were actually the the big guy. The monster at that time were the big stores and the brick and mortar bookstores that existed. And Amazon was actually the little guy that was trying to solve this, overcome this monster. So my point being that it can apply in different contexts. It can apply for an Avengers as well and for an Amazon as well. But the idea is to think about how are you trying to solve a big problem for the world? So then maybe this is one of the ways in which you would tell your story. The second kind of story, again, common with certain kinds of brands, is the idea of rebirth. Everyone, I think, is familiar with the story of Beauty and the Beast. The Beast is basically like, he's, there's of course a damsel in a village, and she interacts with this beast. And the beast used to be a prince, but he behaved badly, so someone cursed him. Probably what Amina is hoping she can, what she was talking about earlier. But then he has a rebirth because he learns something and he understands something, and he has a rebirth, and he becomes like a like a good person, right? Interestingly, a lot of insurance companies use this concept of rebirth. If you think of any ads you've seen for like, health insurance, or like, like basically there's like, there is a point at which someone realizes that, okay, I need to do something about this. And then therefore they go out and they get insurance, right? So it's almost like the sense of rebirth. In the case of health insurance, usually sometimes when people have had like a medical condition, or they've had bad news or something. So this is again a concept that works a lot for a lot of brands and organizations, the concept of rebirth. In our context, if you either are a grassroots organization that is working very closely with, the bottom of the pyramid, beneficiaries, probably the service or intervention that you're offering them is giving them some kind of rebirth. That is maybe one way that you can think of it in the context of business and work. The third type of story I want to talk about here is quest. Somebody mentioned The Hobbit. So The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, again, if you think about some of the best, like the most beloved novels, or stories that we know, they are in fact the same story again and again, right? So even The Hobbit in one sense is the quest. Lord of the Rings is a quest. A bunch of ragtag people get together on a quest to go figure out something, right? This again applies to a lot of organizations and businesses worldwide. Microsoft is an example here for how Microsoft has built their brand over the years. They were always, unlike, a lot of other, tech companies, they were not about being, it was not about like the best design or, other kinds of things. They were always about like, constantly sort of figuring out and working on something to produce the best of it, right? So they were never very sort of, it was not about the swag for them. It was not about the end result. A lot of the times it was actually about the journey. And, and that's how they sort of built their brand over the years as well. And if you continue to sort of look at a lot of the material that they have, it still is focused on that. So again, a very good type of story that works for a lot of organizations. Classic rags to riches. Stories like Aladdin, someone kind of downtrodden, hits a pot of gold, in this case, a magical genie, and this basically takes him from rags to riches and changes his life. A lot of founder-driven organizations or big-name organizations are, this is the story they tell. If you think of Oprah Winfrey, while there is a huge business behind Oprah now, the story that they tell is built on the fact that Oprah had this rags to riches kind of journey, right? And it's this is very common for a lot of founder-driven organizations, where the person is larger than life and where their brand has led to, something that has come out as a result of that, right? So this is, again, if you are the kind of organization which has like, has someone sort of, has a public figure involved, or, has someone that is, if it's a very people-driven or founder-driven organization, again, this is a great way to kind of tell your story that makes people relate to it. The other kind of story, so I'm just going to pause here and say that just after this, I will pause for questions. But if you do have questions in the meantime, please do keep sharing them on chat, and Shami is going to help me address them, and we'll take them as we go. Another common story is The Journey and Return. Finding Nemo, a lovely classic animated movie. People think it's a children's movie, but really it's for all age groups and all kinds of people, because it's such a warm, heartwarming tale of going somewhere and coming back and finding yourself, right? It's about like sort of, you come back and you realize, so you learn a lot on the journey, and then you return to where you started from, and therefore that experience has something. It's not, unlike the quest, for example, it's not like end to end and not something that happens at the end of the quest, but it's about actually finding your way back. Travel brands, again, for example, if Airbnb has used this very effectively in the past. But if you're a travel brand, or if you work in any kind of business that involves, this kind of sort of going out into the world and finding something, but also bringing that back and returning to what you know to be good. This is again a story type that could work very well for you. And finally, like the last two are like classic comedy and tragedy, much harder to do. I would still say the first 5 stories are, they allow for a little bit more nuance, and they allow for layers and gray in how you tell the story. Comedy and tragedy is just, comedy especially is actually the hardest to do, because it's hard to be funny, right? Like it's not so easy to be funny, but also being funny while selling something or, making a point is pretty hard. Bridget Jones is a great example, again, of, global example of like how someone, made a lot of points about what it's like to be a woman, what it's like to be dating, all of those kind of things, but in a very, very humorous way. And Old Spice, if this is a very, again, I don't like, it really depends on the age of the audience here. I think I am totally placing my age with these examples. But Old Spice, I think, is again a good example of, for people who are familiar with the brand, you remember what the brand is, but it's always, it's because like their ads actually had nothing to do with the product, but their ads were always very funny. If you're from India, there's the Amul billboards, that are a good example. The Amul ads, Amul is a dairy brand that sells butter and like a lot of other dairy items, and their products actually have very little, their ads actually have very little to do with butter, but they're always very funny and very political. So, so that's a good example of using comedy to tell your story. And finally, tragedy. Breaking Bad, a very famous show, which had an anti-hero, and actually basically ends in tragedy. Right from Romeo and Juliet, this has always been a, very powerful storytelling mechanism, used very effectively in certain, even in certain, like in non sort of movie ways, right? Which is things like tobacco, when you're really working with like serious health issues. COVID campaigns were that, AIDS was that, tobacco campaigns are that, because there is really only one way to tell people to stop smoking, and you can't be, say, or using tobacco, you can't be funny about it, or you can't say that it's a quest or anything else. There is only one tragedy at the end of it, which is that it's actually going to be bad for you, or it's going to kill you, right? So some kind of medical campaigns and health related campaigns, public service messages always use tragedy, because really that is the only way to do it. I'm going to pause here, and I see, maybe I will just ask Shami if there's anything that needs my attention. Please do let me know. I'm glad, Vidyut, you're sharing what has worked for you. I thought it'd be interesting to, so one thing is this, right? So we have this, okay, 7 types of stories. This is a template, it works for everybody, but how do we kind of break it down for organizations that are, say, B2B, that don't work a lot with, say, don't like, one thing I get a lot is that people are always like, oh, but I don't work with a very young audience, I work with an older audience, so comedy won't work for me, they won't get memes, things like that. And all that is fine. You have to find, of course, what works for you as an organization. But I thought I would take, using the example, I took the liberty of putting our hosts on the spotlight today. And I thought we could use this to kind of talk a little bit about how storytelling applies even in this context, right? The context that we're in today. And, I thought this was a great post. This is, and I know the work that has gone behind this, right? Because we've been interacting for a long time. So there was a lot that went into this. So, here Pollinate Impact talks about, how they started out, what were they trying to solve, and which culminated in the launch of this Pollinate Impact Network. So like from the group, if you could just, again, maybe use the chat, given the story types that we just went through, what do you think this would fall under? What kind of story is this? I see one response, maybe some more. Yeah, so I guess, the 3 responses we've got so far, I think everyone is in agreement. It's the quest. I'm sure when Pollinate Impact team, when they wrote it, I mean, actually, I shouldn't presume to know anything. I'll ask, maybe Ariel, you can let me know on chat as well. Did you actually think of it as a quest? But I think this is a very good example of how you can, they were trying to talk about something over here, which is that what went into this sort of, this whole exercise that they did So it's not that they woke up one day and then suddenly said that we launch Pollinate Impact, right? There's been a year's worth of work that has gone into this. And what was the quest here? They were actually trying to solve these problems, the lack of tools, the struggle to find the right talent, lack of avenues, also, the need to build visibility and credibility. So this is a great way. So as you can see, there is a way they told their story, but their story actually fell into one of the types that we're talking about over here, right? And the point that I'm making is that they came from it the other way. They actually they talked to their stakeholders. I know they did intensive interviews around this. But if they had maybe this framework, it might have made things even simpler for them. They would have been like, okay, this is actually what we're trying to do. They have done this, I think, beautifully and organically. And it's something that calls out to all of us, because all of us can understand the effort and the work that goes into the quest for something, right? So for Pollinate Impact, for example, this is one of the threads. Like, this is an underlying thread of who they are as an organization. And this launch post, for example, was about that. Like, yes, they are trying to solve some problems, but they wanted to make the point that we've also worked very hard to arrive at this end result. So, that's an example of how to use like one of the storytelling types to kind of communicate about your organization. I'll just take another example. I've gone with sort of more, something that maybe like I didn't kind of restrict it to based on the audience. I thought I would go with the network, and I thought I would go with Upaya Social Ventures again, which has presence in multiple regions. So maybe more people will be familiar with this organization. So this is like straight off their website, right? Like, I didn't have to dig deep or anything, and I didn't have to like talk to anyone to understand like what is your brand all about. What do you think Upaya is trying to say here? Which story type are they going for over here? You can again use this chat the same way. Okay, interesting. We've got two types of responses. Let's see if we get more. A third response. Is anyone from Upaya here? That would be amazing if we could actually get them to talk about this. Okay. So here, what we're seeing is multiple responses. It's interesting, right? The first example, it was very clear where it fit in. Here, it's multiple responses. Again, I guess it goes to the point of perception, right? Like where people are coming from. But largely, it seems to be rebirth, rags to riches, and I saw overcoming the monster. Yeah, so I think a few, maybe 3 or 4 more feel like it's overcoming the monster. My reading was overcoming the monster because this was the big problem that they are solving, right? The big problem is that they're trying to fight extreme poverty. How they're doing it is, of course, through dignified jobs and all of those kind of things. The monster here is poverty, absolutely, Debarati. And how they're trying to do it, of course, is through dignified jobs. But I think this brings up the very valid point is that all of us have different stakeholders, and the story also therefore sometimes changes for those stakeholders, right? I see the point about, I saw rags to riches. Ariel said rags to riches because it's actually rags to riches probably for the people who are being lifted out of poverty, right? So I think that is what probably, Ariel, that's what you were going for, because it would be rags to riches for the people who are getting the dignified jobs that is lifting them out of poverty. Rebirth, again, so rebirth could be the other thing that rebirth and rags to riches. I think both of them, for me, when I see these responses, rebirth and rags to riches, for me are about, it's about the bottom of the pyramid, the final audience sort of for this, it's one key stakeholder, the people who are actually being provided these jobs that will lift them out of poverty. So for them, it will be a rebirth and a rags to riches. And the larger picture here, absolutely, is the monster, which is the large monster is extreme poverty, right? Here, the point is that there are different audiences and different stakeholders, so the stories will change for those audiences. Fundamentally, if you can see, nothing has changed. We are not saying, they're not changing their message. It is about dignified jobs and it's about extreme poverty. But what, as you as people, for your different stakeholders, you might vary this, right? So for example, if they were going out, if they were actually, if this was a flyer, so this, the assumption is that this is the website that, you know, probably entrepreneurs or other ecosystem people are going to come and check out. But if they were actually going on ground and maybe they were having a talk or sharing videos or things like that, the message would change a little bit, right? And it would actually be around the rags to riches or the rebirth kind of thing, that if, you know, this solution is actually going to help you improve your income, versus talking to a funder or an entrepreneur who's coming in here, where they're talking about the fact that there is this large problem that they're trying to solve. Again, my point, like I said, is not, there is no, I mean, all the answers made sense, right? But that's the reason, is because there are different stakeholders. And therefore your message or your story will vary for stakeholders, and that's okay. I think a lot of times we get very caught up in the fact that, oh, but like, you know, it should be, yes, of course, it should be clear and all of the, like here, I think there's no doubt that the message is very clear. It's really about the audience and who this is being said for, right? So don't worry about that. We're also going to talk about that a little later today with our guest speaker as well. So I'm going to pause here, and I have homework, or rather classwork now for everyone. I mean, you did come here to learn, so I want you to be a little bit in student mode. So now your turn. This is for you as an audience. I want you to identify 2 key stakeholders for your organization. Pick a story type that matches your brand from the 7. I'll pull the slide back up, you know, once you start writing. But pick a story type that you feel matches your brand. Identify 2 key stakeholders and write down a couple of messages for these 2 key stakeholders based on the story type you've chosen. It's simple. You don't have, I mean, you don't have to overthink it. If you want to use ChatGPT, you can do that as well. You know, that's fine, because the idea here really is to apply this to your organization so that it doesn't exist in like just this, you know, theoretical world. But I do want you to include a call to action. So, you know, what is a call to action? Like here, for example, here the call to action was that, you know, they were announcing their launch, right? And then of course there was like a bunch of things after that about the launch. Here, of course, there is also a call to action that they want you to learn more about what they do, their business model and things like that. Can be a basic call to action, but make sure you include it. So yeah, so this is the assignment right now. I'll pull up the story slide. I'm going to give you 10 minutes for this. If we need less time, and after that, like a classroom, and when there's classwork, I actually am going to call upon maybe a couple of you to come and share out. So I would also like to hear what you put down, and it'll be good for the group to hear as well. So yeah, I'll identify 2 key stakeholders, pick a story type that matches your brand, write a little message for 2 of those audiences. What would the message, what are you, if it's a service or a product, something you're trying to sell, or you have applications open, if you're an incubator, and include a call to action. I will share screen again. In the meantime, I think, so we're at 4 or 5. So I'll check back in like maybe 5 minutes, and then we'll see if we need a little bit more time. Just to keep
Perfect.
things
And
interesting.
I've also put the assignment, Aditi, in the chat, so everyone can refer to it.
Thank you so much. I'm going to play some, so that it's not so quiet, I'm going to play some music for everyone. Nice, relaxing, studying classroom music.
Aditi, you might need to advance the slides.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Perfect. Thanks.
I'll just request everyone else to just keep your points. We'll share a little bit, like, in a few minutes, just so that everyone can kind of apply their own creative juices. I just realized I was enjoying this music all by myself. Do we have, is everyone, is everyone done with the exercise? Yeah, I can see a thumbs up from Salma. So yeah, I think let's start sharing. Any I just realized I was playing some, I was playing music and basically only I was enjoying it. So I'm sorry about that. One of those things is YouTube. How is it integrated with Zoom, and which audio setting needs to be on? One of those kind of things. But anyway, I still enjoyed some music right now. So any volunteers, would anyone like to talk through what they wrote down?
Okay, I'll try.
Who's that?
Yeah,
I'm sorry to see who it is.
Brenda.
Brenda, awesome.
It's Brenda. Yeah. So it just it takes some time to really write things down, but just a rough draft of what I wrote. So I wrote my stakeholders were investors and donors, especially donors through charity for charity organizations, and then investors in the impact space, impact investment space. So my story brand was overcoming the monster. So the message just briefly was, as our population keeps growing in various environmental challenges affect our food systems, we need to take action to guarantee food security in our continent in Africa. So the call to action was join us in creating a food secure Africa. So that's what I wrote, like briefly like that. Yeah.
Nice. So Brenda, how did you feel when you were writing it? Was it what was going through your mind? Was it difficult? What were you was there any struggle? Was it easy?
I think trying to, because one of the things I noticed, like you wrote stakeholders, so like there are various stakeholders in my line, even the people like the beneficiaries and everything. So I realized in this moment that I need to, like, every time I need to like tweak my message according to the people communicating to. So it was a bit like, I think, mind-opening for me, and also like a bit struggling to really like define who am I going to communicate with right now. But at least for me, one thing I've learned out of this is every time I'm speaking, I have to know, like, even if it's one-on-one, who am I speaking to? Am I speaking to like a farmer whom I want to help grow, or am I speaking to someone whom I want to invest and help the company grow? So that's one of the things. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. And I think so yeah, one very important point you mentioned is that to sort of keep in mind who you're talking to, but also what you said about overcoming the monster, right? I think one of the biggest challenges we all face, and again I want to reiterate that this is not, we are actually doing like our, you have your organization to run, you're actually trying to solve the problem, you're not meant to be the storyteller, right? But the thing is that you have to be the storyteller because you're trying to solve the problem. But as soon as you said overcoming the monster, and you said like food security, all of those kind of things, it was immediately very clear what you're trying to do, right? And I think the challenge a lot of times is that sometimes it just helps to just say the same thing again and again, just consistency of message. So every single time, if it's like, okay, what we're trying, this is the problem we're trying to solve, we're overcoming this big monster. And so the first time people don't get it, the second time people don't get it, but like the third and fourth time, just doing it consistently, people will understand what it is. So so I think that was a great that was great to hear that from you. So thank you so much. Thank you, Brenda, for sharing. I saw Vidyut had also volunteered. Vidyut was first off the bat with the response. Vidyut, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure, Aditi, thanks. Yeah, so quick background on that. I mean, we actually work in a state called Himachal Pradesh in India, and here we have a lot of environmental issues, which I think Aditi and everybody who's from India will know that Himachal got ravaged by heavy rains in last few months. We are working for a year, and we work with the government here to sort of take the teachers through a journey on how they can spread sustainability through their school children and hence to community. So we say in Hindi, Satat, Samaj, and Samudaya. So you work with yourself and then sort of the people around you and society. And my target segment are twofold. One is the teachers, and these are all, mind you, not educated teachers. These are all government teachers. These are small government schools, which has, maybe 30, 40 students, max leading up to 200, maybe 150, 200 max. And again, and the second stakeholder is the government to partially fund this kind of thing. And my communication, hence, what I've not mentioned actually, predominantly in a language called Hindi, which is the main language for North India. And in terms of problem and storytelling, definitely it's a monster problem because sustainability is again a big issue, which I think cuts across whether it's you're a private or a government teacher or government. It's a big problem which we are trying to
Yeah.
solve. And so it's a monster problem for sure is what came to my mind. And second also was the fact that we run cohorts. The idea was how they can join us and make Himachal green is something I thought will be a good keyword to use because I always feel for a monster problem you can sort of unify different uh, stakeholders to a common cause. It I think it resonates with them. It's larger cause like making Himachal more green and even if I contribute a bit. So that was my thinking overall.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I think there's and I see more responses in the chat. And so there's one thing here, right? Which is, I think yes, there is an overcoming the monster aspect to it, which is that this large problem that you're trying to solve for Himachal, right? But for example, when I see, I hear what you're talking about. And so is there also, for example, could it also be, is there a sort of journey and return, right? So there are people,
Yes, yes. That was a
for
debate
example,
which I
like,
was having. True,
yeah,
true.
because, for a lot of people, it's about sort of, Himachal is home. They're coming back. Maybe you're working with a lot of people who maybe come back to Himachal literally, but also it's about kind of reimagining or rebuilding what Himachal used to be. Could be that as well, right? Like harking back to a older time when, things were better or something like that. I'm just brainstorming here.
So, I had just two questions for you, Aditi. One was that somewhere, I mean, a question and answer and thought also. One was that how does one do this storytelling from a long-term perspective? Now, what I mean to say is, this is my first batch which I'm running, in fact, concluding this month. For them, I thought the whole green aspect is very important, because they're the first time. But like you're saying, maybe the story will change after a year or 2 years. When I know there are two, three cohorts and 40 people are there, and there I feel there, I think it's more like a journey, because you have shown some success and you want others to join. So I was thinking that might make sort of made little bit of sense in my mind.
Sure.
The second question was Aditi, in a journey, the story also changes in a sense that the initially when you launch, the people join, but then it's more integrity. This is the course content. This is how you join, and there it becomes very different. Where how does one then put the monster? But does it become a small part of the entire communication? So that was my question. Thank you.
Okay. So I would say, see, if you start out thinking, okay, the story is going to keep changing, then you're starting off in the back foot, right? That's yeah. I mean, it's a balance. While organizations change and things will change, so therefore there will be your messaging may change, your brand identity may change, but fundamentally, largely the mission purpose rarely changes too much, and I'm sure everyone has experienced this. It may just be that how you're executing it is different because you're reacting to the market, right? Pollinate Impact is a great example of that. So, the avatar that they started off with, but they were really responding to the market. And then, they came up with this sort of solution for that. But if you look at it in one way, it could have always been that you're on the quest, right? In the sense that because the quest is to create a better ecosystem for the people who need it. Or the quest is, or the story is that it's about, bringing Himachal back to like where it was, or it's about overcoming the monster. So I think fundamentally it should not change too much, but execution absolutely will change day to day. I mean, when I say day to day, I don't mean literally day to day, but it will change as the organization evolves. That will change as well. So because some of your messages will change, some of your maybe some stakeholders will get added. Even with Unlock Impact, my organization, this is what has happened, right? Over time, what we set out to do, fundamentally, what we set out to do has not changed, but some of the messaging has changed around it because we've also been responding to the market. So that's okay. but I think core kind of purpose and mission generally stays strong, and that is what kind of will decide what the story is that you want to talk about.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let's keep going. There is more time at the end later on as well for Q&A. I love these responses. So, Vrishali has shared. I would like to actually urge everyone to sort of see other people's responses as well. And if you want, please feel free to respond to what other people have said, because I think the best thing is that we actually learn from each other, right? So once you see somebody else, putting something down, you're like, okay, I didn't think of it this way. But because we have sort of a schedule to stick to, I will keep going. But we have some time at the end to come back to some of these concepts that, then we'll have more time for Q&A. Thanks. Debarati has shared, Vrishali has shared, and I saw there was one more from Duncan. So do check out their responses on chat. I think, so there's two parts to this, right? So one is that, of course, kind of getting clarity on what is the thing that you're trying to tell people? What are you, and I trust me, this really all, as I said, all stories can literally be simplified into like these 7 types. And everybody has been telling these kind of stories since the dawn of time. Like I said, it's like from Romeo and Juliet to like, the latest TV show that you're all watching, they fit into some of these. And my point is that we can too, as organizations, this will work for us as well. We just need to sort of put ourselves in that mindset, right? I think we wanted to, so we're just going to pause here. We have one, I think Shami wanted to take a group photograph so that as part of their storytelling, they can also sort of put this out there. And we will then go into the next section, which is, I think, so the one, it's all good and fine as to what is the story we have to tell, but how do the actual execution and pieces around that work, right? Because I think that is what most of us find the hardest. So we'll come to that, but before that, I'm just going to pause here. Shami or Ariel, will you handle this?
Yep, sure thing. Can you just pause your screen share,
Yes.
Aditi? And it would be great if we can see all of your lovely faces. I see we have a few people who are on there. So those of you who have been to some of our other potluck sessions are well seasoned in this. So yeah, Brenda, Salma, Emmanuel, Rashali, let's see your video. So we're going to do what we call is a surprise photo. And Shami, I don't know where you are, but if you can turn your video on, which means you're basically going to cover your eyes and we're going to count down from 3. So 3, 2, 1, 0, and then you're going to open your eyes and make a surprise face. And we're going to take an awesome screenshot. Okay. Clear? Everybody got it? All right. So we're going to cover your eyes so you can't see anybody. And I'm going to count down from 3, 2, 1. Surprise. Okay, awesome. Thank you guys. All right. That was it from our side of Aditi, just to keep things fun and lively.
I love that. That's a great idea. I'm so stealing this for next time.
Please do.
Awesome.
Please do.
So we're about half an hour to go from the end. So, and this is, I'll be bringing in our guest speaker who has very patiently been waiting to come on. But before that, there was another poll that we wanted to share. So which I'm going to ask Shami to put here.
सबका अपना रोल है, ठीक है, कोई चीप रोल थोड़ी है, सबका अपना रोल है.
Can you guys see it?
Yes.
Yes, Shami,
Okay.
we've got it. And thanks, Tassin. The link is also in the chat at the beginning.
Thank you. So shifting gears a bit as we go into the second part of the workshop. Now think about your organization. What is your biggest comms challenge? It'll just be good to understand what people are dealing with in the room. If there is another, please do mention. You can use the chat to mention if there's something else. Okay. Okay, I think we have a very clear challenge emerging. We have a couple of more questions that we'd like you to answer. Okay, nice. So we have a few responses here. Seems like many people do have some kind of resource. They have a manager and a freelancer. All right, third question. I must say this is new. I rarely see the confidence that I see where three responses have actually said we're savvy with our comms and marketing. That is just so good to hear. People are rarely that confident in their comms and marketing. Understandably, execution is, I think, the hardest for most people, and fair enough, and that makes sense. Awesome. Thank you so much, Shami. So I think we see kind of, this was really just to get a sense of where the group is, right? So the sense that I get is that so most people are implementing some kind of communications and storytelling, but probably facing this challenge that it just seems to be going out into the void, and then really being able to measure what is happening with that. Most people have some resources. It was good to see that many of you have like a manager or a freelancer or someone that you're working with. There were, of course, a couple who said that they have none of the above. And again, that is very common, right? Because basically, it's probably just that you're at that stage where it was not required. And, you will get to that point where you will get it. And finally, yeah, a mix. The execution seems to be the hardest thing for most people. So again, I think the best way to do all of these things is to just simplify, right? Like that's really my motto. So I believe that all stories can be broken down. So yes, there's a type of story to be told. And there are also stories, what especially for organizations and brands, what kind of stories should you be putting out there, right? So there's the people behind the organization. If you're a founder-driven organization, then you as the person, what is your inspiration, passion, why do you do it? Or the people, the culture, the people behind the organization. That's one important piece. The second piece is your customers. Talking about, I think a lot of times we sell to customers, but we don't talk enough about our customers, whether they're beneficiaries or the people we're working with, or even if they're just customers, clients. We sell a lot to them, but we don't actually tell their stories. What are their behaviors? What are their needs? What are their fears? What is the connection and empathy you have for them? And most importantly, how is your solution helping them? This, of course, is done through things like testimonials and, interviews and surveys and things like that. But very important, of course, the most important. And the other piece is, of course, your company itself. If you're too small or you feel you're too small to talk about this, it's okay. But you will still have some certain personalities, values, traits. You may not have got an HR consultant to come and do like a big exercise around it. But fundamentally, as an organization, you have certain values and traits. Talk about that. People actually want to know, because there's so much noise and clutter out there now. People actually want to know a little bit more about you, right? What is your vision? What do you represent? Why are you making the world a better place? Very, very important. And especially, and this is really just, for people working specifically with impact. So it has to be a combination. So yes, you tell stories about yourself and your customers and your company, but if you're an impact organization, this is, again, just a few things to just keep in mind. keep talking about your purpose. Why do you exist? What is the problem you're solving? How are you overcoming that monster? Or how are you rejuvenating rebirth for someone else? All of those kind of things. Your mission, who do you serve? What do you do? The outcome you create. In the impact space, especially, very important to keep validating. So that's why people keep connecting back either to ESG frameworks or like, the SDGs, or they talk about their B Corp certification, because the impact sector needs a lot of validation, because in some ways it is still, people have still some sort of, there are barriers, right? People don't fully understand it. There's not enough awareness. So very important to keep validating. And on the other side, yes, numbers, impact numbers matter, but also the stories of, the people and the work you do as well. And finally, be very transparent. So this is, again, in India, for example, there has been of late, there's been sometimes, with the impact sector, there's a bit of like, but there's always some sort of doubts, around, credibility and things like that. I think the best way to approach all of this is to be very transparent and just, sort of put your work out there and really talk very transparently about your compliances, or what is it that you do, and, how do you kind of I really have to emphasize these points, because if you're working in the impact space, this is super important. It has to be part of your storytelling. Again, if you have questions, please do put them on chat. We will address them as we go along, but I've really talked a lot. And I really think that the best way to learn is to learn from our peers. And, we want to do that by having Simunza join us today. Ariel, of course, introduced Simunza at the start, and he runs this organization called BongoHive. Thank you so much, Simunza, for joining us, taking the time out to be here, but also agreeing to maybe share some of, what you've been working on recently and with the audience. With that, Simunza, maybe we can start with a bit of an introduction. Can you tell us a little bit about your organization and what you do?
Oh, thank you very much for having me. Yeah, as mentioned, my name is Simunza Muyangana. I live in Lusaka, Zambia, where I work for an innovation hub called BongoHive, which we started in 2011. And the focus that we have has been on supporting entrepreneurs, working with larger corporations and organizations to create new innovative products and services, and then also getting companies like startups to have a space that they can work from, and channeling investment towards them.
Awesome, thank you. And we spoke about this earlier this week, but I would like you to share again for the larger audience. So, for example, if I had to ask you how you would kind of rate your comms, would you say you're overwhelmed, you find it difficult to execute, or do you feel you're savvy with your communications?
I'd have to say that we're pretty okay with regards to our communications. It can become overwhelming for the team, in the sense that we have a team that constitutes a manager that oversees all our communications, and then a media designer that designs all our posts that go onto social media, our videos, who edits our videos that go out, and designs all the logos that we do, all the design work that takes place when we're partnering with, when we have partners as well. Then we also have a writer, a social media writer that also gets in them. Now, where it gets overwhelming is we have communication that goes out with regards to to BongoHive itself, and BongoHive is split out into three units. So it's trying to make sure that all three units get some attention, depending on the client or the audience that we're trying to get to. And then we have programs that we run with partners that are targeted towards entrepreneurs. So it could be hackathons, it could be innovation challenges, acceleration programs, and other programs. We've got an acceleration program starting on Monday. So all of this channeling goes out there. And mid-program, we like to also share the success or the journey of the entrepreneurs as they're going through the program. And that's something that we also have to highlight, or training that we're doing with SMEs around the country. So that can be a bit for the team. If you also add live events that we also run. So if we run workshops at our co-working space, we also record those and stream those live. And so it's the same team that makes sure that that happens.
I mean, because you're talking about it being overwhelmed, I have 3 people from my team on the call, and they will all tell you that they're equally overwhelmed as well. I don't think there is a comms person that exists there who is not overwhelmed, because there's always so much going on, right? And it's also like such a fast moving world, so you have to stay on top of so many things. But also I think it's the size of teams and growing organizations. This is always going to be the challenge, right? And so my question to you is, so now you're here where you have all of these resources, but what was, so one is that, do you set like communications goals? Do you have certain goals that you have for yourself? Do you set that annually? Did you kind of plan that out and work back from that? How is your, journey been to figuring some of these things out?
Yes, we have to. We have to set a goal. We have to plan it out. Otherwise, it would be utter chaos if we didn't. In a single year, if you break it down into quarters, we have outreach that we have with regards to education that we're sharing, with regards to education, community engagement that we have with the entrepreneurs that we work with. And that could be lessons learned or things that we believe are important educational lessons for the entrepreneurs. So there's community messaging that goes out. Then, like I said, there are programs that are launching in each quarter. There are different programs that are either firing off, ending, or being revised, or we are retelling the story of the entrepreneurs that got through that. We tend to share news of what's happening in the ecosystem as well. We've done this for the last 12 years. Every week on a Monday, we've got a newsletter that goes out in addition to everything that goes out on social media. And none of that would be possible if it wasn't planned. So we have to plan the year ahead for our entrepreneur support, communications, which is one audience which largely goes towards the entrepreneurs. And then we've got communication that goes out to the partners that we work with, just to update them on what's happening and how their support is helping entrepreneurs to thrive. Then we've got communication that goes out to the corporations and that we do consulting work with, and also just marketing to let the market know that we've got certain services. And then in addition to that, we've got a co-working space, which also continuously has activities going on inside it, to try and bring in the right type of, to try and attract clients to come and use the co-working space as well.
Sure.
So if you add programs and if you add their own storytelling, and then we also do a lot of showcasing of the entrepreneurs that we work with to show the impact of their growth. And any good news that happens to them, and then opportunities that we also share to them for programs that they can participate in. They might not be BongoHive programs, that it could be other opportunities that they could participate in, funding opportunities and other things. It's impossible to do that without any planning. There's a lot that goes to the team.
Sure. And I mean, I'm relating so much to this, right? So I feel like other people will relate to this as well, because everyone is in hustle mode, right? So because as I mentioned earlier, you're trying to solve a larger problem, and therefore, and the storytelling is very integral to that. But then that also means it has to adapt to that. So one of the questions which I'd asked you earlier as well, and I thought that was interesting. So you have multiple stakeholders and you have multiple programs to market, to talk about, to highlight the impact of what you're doing. What is the challenge that you're finding with all of that?
Yeah, I think time to focus on each of the stakeholders can be a challenge, but also sometimes it's very, very easy to mix up the strategies that we have. It's very easy to, because we use a monolith brand, BongoHive. It's very, very easy to mix up the messaging for the different stakeholders and just try to blanket it under one type of message. So, but then we also try to be careful in how we nuance that messaging towards each audience, to make sure that we know which audience is being approached to with regard to what we're trying to communicate to them, and the channel we're trying to communicate to them on. So for example, we know that the audience that we engage with on Twitter and Facebook is not the same audience that reads the newsletter and responds to us on the newsletter. So then making sure that the right messaging goes to the right channels can be overwhelming. And that's where sometimes but it's also just making sure. So what we're currently working on right now is we are revising our strategy and revising our personas that we communicate with based on the latest feedback that we have received from them, so that we can fine tune the messaging that we send out to the different stakeholders.
And you mentioned this, that one of the things that, and I'd like to talk about a couple of the best practices that you've talked about, but getting everybody within the organization, and not just within the organization, but all of your sort of stakeholders, but having a homogeneous message so that everyone knows exactly what to say, right? And then you mentioned this, this tagline or whatever that you came up with. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh yes. So we noticed as we were growing, trying to keep everybody on the same page and communicating what we do in the same way was it could get a little bit disjointed, especially when you have new people coming onto the team and some people exiting the team over the years. And as new people come on, then so it was like, okay, great. Even though we share a manual, a handbook when everybody joins the team, trying to get everybody to communicate it in the same way. For example, if somebody on the team, today's Friday, if they're out with friends in the evening and they want to bump into somebody and somebody was to say, where do you work? You work for BongoHive. What does BongoHive do? We wanted to make it easy for everybody to be able to say the same thing. So two things that we did was, one, we came up with a tagline that we knew everybody could learn and everybody could say, and everybody loved that everybody on the team could embrace. So we say we work with great minds building viable solutions that change the world. So everyone on the team loves that, and everybody can.
Could you repeat that? Sorry, a little slower. Could you repeat that a little slower?
All right. Sorry about that. We work with great minds building viable solutions that change the world. So it's aspirational.
Beautiful.
And everybody who joins the team and everybody who sees the BongoHive brand knows that tagline, and people who are on the team know that that's usually the first thing we'll say. And then of course it's mystic. It opens up the opportunity for people to say, how do you do that? And then they can talk about the work that they do depending on the team that they're on. Because then we define great minds very, very loosely. So great minds could be the entrepreneurs, it could be the investors we work with, it could be the partners that we work with, it could be the clients we work with on the innovation side. So we intentionally chose the word great minds to make all the stakeholders we work with fit in within that bracket of great minds. The other thing that we've done is to try and entrench a knowledge of what we do is we have automated our responses to queries that come in over digital channels. So whether coming through email, social media, and so on, we funnel them to Slack. And if you respond in Slack, a response is sent back to the channel that the messaging came from. But what we do then is every single week, two members of the team, we've got a program in which two members of the team, all the way from the executive director or the CEO, so including me, who's the director of innovation and entrepreneurship, down to the intern, they all take a turn to respond to customer queries and or client queries, and by doing so, because we've got an FAQ list that you're forced to learn, and you have to do that for 1 week. So then by doing so, you're forced to first and foremost understand what type of questions people ask about us or people want to learn from us. And so you're forced to learn what answers to give people when they have the responses by looking at the FAQs. And if it's not in the FAQs, you know who to reach out to say, oh, this type of question I need to ask the entrepreneurship team, or I need to ask the innovation team, or I need to ask the software development team. to be able to respond to this, and then you learn something new. So if you were working in the entrepreneurship team and you didn't know, and the question that was asked was a software development question, you were forced to ask the software development team, like, hey, I've received this question, what's the answer to this? And they'll give you an answer to that. And hopefully you get to understand the team much better.
I love that idea. I'm going to steal that as well. These sessions are also
You're
always
welcome
great for
to.
me because I get to learn so much from people. So that's great. We'll maybe just do one more, and then we are opening up for Q&A. So please do, if you have questions for Simunza, please do keep them ready. We'll open for Q&A in a couple of minutes. I guess maybe one last thing for you, Simunza, is that well, if you had to sort of, this group of people, if you had to tell them, you know, things that you feel like they should definitely try, or, you know, something that's worked for you, this is a good example, right? Like having everyone in the team talk to customers to understand. But anything else, if you had to sort of, I don't want to say advice, but if you have tips for people, for this audience, what would you tell them?
I think it's consistency in your communication. So I think what we've done over 11 years, one of the first things that we learned when we started, it's actually 13 years, 13 years ago, was we approached partners and had tried to have conversations with partners. And the question that they kept asking us was, but where's the evidence of the work that you have done? And so something that they encouraged us to do was share a lot of pictures, do a lot of writing on the work that you've done, share a lot of the numbers of the impact that you got. We're still in the process of writing like an annual report, where we're not yet at that stage yet. I mean, we could have done it a long time ago, we just haven't had the time to do so. But if you go online, you will notice that we are online every single day. If you follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, we tend to post every single day. And if you join our newsletter, you know that without fail, in the afternoon, on a Monday afternoon, at least Central African time, you will get our newsletter. And keeping that rhythm going on year after year after year has now sent out messaging, I think, that at least within Zambia and Africa has started to give an understanding of people who've come across BongoHive. Certainly know that we say the same thing over and over again, even if it's different programs, different challenges we're addressing, so on. We sort of message it in a similar way to then let people know what we're doing, the support we're giving entrepreneurs, that we're very pro-founder. That's the messaging that's the tone. Even the tone of messaging is casual, pro-founder. We always come out swinging on the side of the founder, not on the. Yes, we love investors. Yes, we love our partners, but we always come out swinging on the side of the founders to make sure to let everybody know that we fight for and we believe in supporting the founders. So getting that tone right and getting that message right. So even if we have like a Twitter Spaces, people know that when BongoHive is speaking, we're not going to be yelling at the founders. That's something that we'll do in a mentorship session or anything like that. But in a meeting, they know that we will fight on behalf of the founders.
Awesome, thank you. Just again, if there are any questions, maybe just raise your hands so that we know who's asking the question. But going back to if you saw the poll, Simunza, I think most people talked about the fact that they're finding it difficult to measure the outcome of the communications that they're doing. What have you tried? What are you doing? What's working?
Oh yeah, measuring outcomes of the communication is dependent on the call to action or what you're trying to achieve in that moment. So, for example, we could you're looking to draw applications into a program that you're running. Your outcomes are then going to be very, very clearly how many people have actually applied. So we've noticed patterns, and we've learned when we need to make adjustments to the communication that goes out. So, for example, we run a Women in Tech program with the partnership of the bank, and we know that it takes us about 6 to 8 weeks to get the target number of applications in before we can start to then draw down to select the entrepreneurs that we need to get to. We will launch. We'll go all the way by creating a launch event, link people to the website. Even if the initial 2 weeks is they don't have access to the website, is we harvest the email addresses to say, are you interested in this program? Do you want more information? The moment we launch the application forms, we email everybody who showed interest. And then we have a webinar that gives people information about the program and tells people and walks people through the application form just in case there are any tricky questions that they think they won't understand. And then we run the applications. A week before closing, we run another webinar just to answer any questions that people who started the application process and are finding it hard to answer some of the questions. We run another webinar just to respond to any questions people have. And then we start emailing people out to let them know that applications will be closed, and that will be on our social media. We'll do a countdown, a 7-day countdown towards the close of the applications. And by the time we close applications, then at least we know that it generally works that we've got the number that we're. But all of this means that we're continuously engaging and monitoring the numbers to see, are we on target? Are we heading towards target? Are the trends getting towards there? And do we need to have an intervention to increase or to boost the numbers that apply? That's one example.
Thank you. That's quite rigorous. Thank you for sharing that. Any questions? We have a few minutes for audience questions. If anyone would like to ask any questions, you can just ask directly. It's Friday evening in some parts of the world.
It's Friday afternoon, everywhere, or Friday evening on your end. So yeah, I guess everybody's going out.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Which is good.
No, I think mine is just like a comment of some learning that I've got. So I was just thinking when Simunza was talking about the general audience, like on social media, you find that you have all these stakeholders, but they're all there. So now who do you focus on? So I think one of the learnings from me from the end, maybe you'll correct me if I'm wrong, is on the like on social media or on channels where all your audience, like your stakeholders are there, you lean more onto your main target audience and also like you focus on your call to action. So that's what I got. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing, Brenda.
Yeah,
Anyone else?
and in addition to that, it's also segmenting the channels that your social, segmenting the channels that your audience uses. So anything to do with partners, mentors, experts that we engage, so on and so on. We use LinkedIn. We use LinkedIn and email for those. When we are trying to get to entrepreneurs, we largely use Facebook and Twitter and other social media to be able to Instagram to be able to get to those. So it all comes down to who are you trying to communicate with, how much information do they need, are they the type of audience that needs to read through something to get convinced, or are they people who be like, we've got an entrepreneurship program with a possible grant of $10,000. We can do that in a very, very quick short post and people will be attracted and will read that on the website. So it's also good to segment your channels.
Very true. I think maybe one question for you, Simunza, on chat. What are the channels of communication that have been most effective for you, for BongoHive? For BongoHive or for the individual? Amina, is the question for organization, individual?
We're very, very digital. We rarely ever use traditional media in the sense of newspapers, TV, radio, or almost never. And if we do, when we do, it's usually a case that, I'm not saying we never, when we do, it's usually the case that it's a partnership with a media partner who's got a very strong presence on other channels. So for example, the Women in Tech program, because it's in partnership with a bank, they've got very strong channels that use radio and that use television. So yes, then in those cases, we will use radio and television to get to their broad reach of customers in that case. Otherwise, we tend to work on social media a lot. We also have a community of alumni that have been through BongoHive programs that's based on WhatsApp. So we also use that channel to talk to keep them. It's an interesting channel in the sense that we don't control it, or we own it, but we don't control it. Like the entrepreneurs in that channel, it's almost like peer-to-peer. They talk to one another and give each other advice. And we rarely go and say, hey, this is what you should do with your startup. It's like we let them, they'll ask questions we don't answer. They will answer themselves and all kind of stuff. All we do inside there is then pass on any, collect anything or any feedback they want to give us. Like, hey, why is BongoHive doing this? Or BongoHive could have done better if it did that. We hear that from them. And then also, if we are sharing programs, we can share with them opportunities we can share through the channel, and which they are happy to also share to their broader, to their friends and peers and other people within a channel like that. So it's different. Definitely a lot of digital channels, different channels for different audiences that we use.
I think this last thing that you mentioned is very interesting because we've seen that a lot. I think with the whole sort of digitalization of everything, right? So there are a lot of digital communities that exist, and we've seen that sort of, you know, the brand controlling the narrative doesn't work there, right? Like it actually really helps if people best interact with each other. It's informal, and you have to sort of let go, right? Like you can't control that. The thing is to build the story well enough that, you know, and I've seen that, but that also works as the best referral, right? Like it's also like people, if they connect via your brand, but, you know, they sort of have the freedom to build those communities and everything. I think we've seen that works really well. And also a lot more of that is happening now, because I think this one-way thing of like, okay, this is my brand and this is how I'll tell my story, and like one-way communication, it has its place. But peer groups and interaction, I think, is really... that adds a lot of credibility, maybe far more than what media outlets are able to do now and things like that, you know. So that's interesting that you mentioned that, because we've been seeing a lot of that as well. Super, thank you so much. I have my eye on the time, so I just need a few minutes at the end, and I saw Ariel's video come on, so that's my cue. But thank you so much, Simunza, for, you know, talking us through your organization and your process. And, you know, I think there was a lot, as I said, I'm stealing some ideas. I hope other people will too as well. Imitation is the best form of flattery. And on that note, I just want to leave you all with a couple of things. Just, you know, I think we kind of unpacked a few concepts today. But every good learning session also then therefore has some homework. You know, we did go into student mode today, so, you know, there will also be some homework to go with that. So just wanted to leave you with a couple of things, is that there are some... So yes, there's all of these things we need. We understood two main things today. One is that how do you, when you're anchoring your organization and your brand, how do you break down how you tell your story in a way that makes it actually accessible, not just to your stakeholders, but something that you are also able to put out there. And then in the second part, we actually heard from someone who's executing on ground on what is it that they do. And therein lies the thing, right? Like the journey. One is that you need to think about where you are at the top level, but also how do you go about executing. And I was happy to see that several of you said that you're savvy with this, and, you know, more people said that they're having trouble with execution. But hopefully, you know, Simunza's the conversation with Simunza also helped you to understand how to actually execute, right? Like anything else, this too is an important vertical in your organization that you need to pay attention to. But this is this is an absolute, you know, this is the toolkit that everybody needs to have at this point. So if you said that you don't have, you know, so there's two parts to it, the strategy. So one is that you need a comm strategy. We work on a lot of these resources, and we just like put them out on our website for free. So please do check it out. But like Simunza said, it all starts with a strategy and actually knowing what you want to achieve, doing an analysis of your brand and understanding where you are, and then breaking that down into like a content plan that you're actually executing on a regular basis. I would say this, it needs time and patience. Like anything else in your company and in your organization, it needs some time, it needs some patience, but it will happen. And on the execution side, calendars are important. Like how you would have a calendar for a product launch, or if you were, you know, about to launch a new service, or, you know, if you had a sales cycle, you would have a calendar for it. The comms and storytelling piece also calendars really help with that execution. Having a dedicated resource, it doesn't necessarily need to be a full-time manager or but any kind of resource could be a freelancer, it could be an agency, it could be a full-time person, but someone whose job it is to care only about this. So not the CEO, not, top management, but someone, someone senior enough who actually cares deeply about this and they are accountable for this. And I think Simunza explained that very clearly. Team contribution is very important. So getting the team involved in this really helps to enable and sort of, make the brand bigger and better. And like anything else, you need to spend a little money on this. I firmly believe you don't need to spend a lot of money on this, but you do need to spend some money on it. It could be on things like even just the resource that you're getting in, right? But it could be on things like maybe some promos. You want to put a little money into like developing, spending a little more to develop a good website. Not something that, we have cobbled together, or, it could be something that it's maybe you want to spend on good design, things like that. Having a little bit of budget helps. And of course, these days, there are all these tools available that really make all of our jobs a lot easier. Tools like Canva, Hootsuite, ChatGPT, and way more. So just, this is a toolkit that I think really helps anyone either starting out or looking to scale up their communications. Definitely something you should have. And this is my sort of, from my experience and what I feel really works and what I've seen works for organizations, being very personal. Organizations and brands can be personal, show the people behind the work and the thought behind the brand. Keep it very real, keep it very simple. Don't try to do something. If you're not an Instagram kind of brand, there's no point doing a lot of Instagram reels because it'll always, it just won't seem authentic. But if you're the kind of organization or people who like to write thoughtful posts and blogs, then stick with that. That's fine. If there's something that really sets you apart, it's just embrace it. The world is looking for different, whether you're like, for example, one thing that we talk about a lot is that we're a gender smart organization. Our Comms Ninja vertical employs only women. And we make sure that we mention it all the time, right? Because that's something that makes us different and people really appreciate that about our story. So why not, right? And it's something that's really meaningful to us. As I think Vidyut said this, your organization will evolve and change. You have to be open to your story evolving as well. And you have to kind of keep an eye on what are the trends and perceptions growing around it. And finally, just, measuring, know what works for yourself and for your audience. And this is very important, that don't chase numbers and what the audience wants. It's also important to know what works for yourself. If you don't have the resources and the thing to kind of do like this extensive kind of strategy planning and content planning that Simunza has talked about, that's fine. Just do what works for you as an organization. If that means that if your social media posts are not that many, maybe you only put out like one newsletter a month, or maybe it's just that, okay, you have a really strong website, that is fine. But just know what works for yourself and for your audience. Don't try to do something that doesn't ring, that you can't sort of keep up with. And of course, you can always evaluate and course correct later on when you feel like something's not been working out. And with that, unfortunately, I'm over time, but I hope that, there was some good takeaways for all of you from this. I just wanted to say, I think the thing about how storytelling has changed in the last few years, that it's not a nice to have, it's actually become good business. It is actually good for the business. So definitely think about this as you go out and go forth and build the story and comms for your organization. And I'm happy to, of course, always chat more, and, you can get in touch with me, or, happy to talk more about this. I can talk endlessly about this. So I'm going to stop now and hand back to Ariel.
Thank you so much, Aditi, and thank you also, Simunza. This is a fantastic session. I'm pushing out a quick poll here on Zoom just to understand how you would like to engage with us further as it pertains to, storytelling and communications. If you want to get in touch with Aditi, if you are looking for comms support and you're interested in getting a Comms Ninja, please feel free to reach out to her directly for that support. I think it's an awesome model, and we benefit from it at Pollinate. So thanks so much for that. And yeah, just wanted to give a plug there for Unlock Impact, and don't mind my children who are screaming outside. Sorry if you can hear that. Yeah, just let us know how you would like to engage in the future. At the Potluck, we're really just getting started. So we'll follow up with you based on what you're interested in, and the types of trainings and resources and tools you're looking for in the future that will help your communications campaign and storytelling efforts moving forward. So thank you to our speakers once again. We will kind of wrap it here, and my colleague Tahseen will push out just a quick video that shares the story, our story from Pollinate Impact. And please feel free to stay in touch with us on LinkedIn, on our website. We'll be launching our calendar of events there shortly. Yeah, bring a friend. The next time we have sessions, awesome sessions happening next week. And we look forward to seeing many familiar faces again next week. So thanks so much. And yeah, Tahseen, off to you.
It is estimated that more than 7,500 incubators and over 3,000 accelerators operate globally. Social impact incubators play a vital role in supporting and nurturing social enterprises. However, incubators struggle to gain visibility or the credibility needed to access consistent funding, and the incubation industry has yet to achieve recognition as a fully established industry.
We often face the same challenges related to things like strategic growth, team management, financial sustainability, etc.
Impact incubators lack a space in which they can promote a shared understanding of best practices in their work.
Two of the challenges that I think are really important for incubators to try to overcome are staffing and related to funding.
To understand the incubation industry better and to arrive at the best possible solution, we interviewed more than 50 social impact leaders from around the world, including entrepreneurs, incubators, accelerators, funders, investors, and researchers, and here's what they had to say.
By creating a network where knowledge sharing is open, where there's an openness to understand from each other's mistakes and successes.
And there's something so supportive about having this kind of community that can enable you to troubleshoot these issues, and that really helps you to focus more on this impact piece alongside the incubation that we're doing.
By bringing together the stakeholders in this network, we hope to create a larger picture of the whole and the part that each of them is playing in this.
And this is why impact leaders from across the globe came together to design a global network of impact incubators to build Pollinate Impact.
Pollinate Impact is a member-driven network of social impact incubators,
where we aim to create a thriving, resilient, and mutually supportive ecosystem for impact incubators across the global south.
We believe that by empowering, resourcing, and enabling these impact enablers,
we can collectively amplify our ability to solve the biggest problems facing the people and the planet.
Pollinate Impact is an avenue for impact incubators to connect, collaborate, and co-create a bigger impact.
In essence, we celebrate the pollination of impact.
This network has been co-designed by a group of social impact leaders, representing incubators, entrepreneurs, academia, foundations, and networks. One word that comes to mind when you think of Pollinate Impact:
synergy, amplification,
community,
collaboration,
openness.
Join us on this inspiring journey. Together, we will solve the challenges facing people and the planet.
Great. Thanks so much again, everyone. And have a lovely rest of your day. Have a great weekend. Aditi, Simunza, thank you so much again. And really looking forward to engage with you all over next week's potluck sessions. So thanks so much and have a great one.